Well, hello and welcome to News Centre. I'm Ashmit Kumar. In a major relief for Go First, the company law tribunal has admitted the cash-strapped airline's voluntary insolvency application, and it has granted it protection from recoveries by lenders as well as lessors. Now, the tribunal has directed initiation of insolvency proceedings against Go First. It has also directed Abhilash Lal, the insolvency resolution professional, to take all steps to maintain Go First's status as a going concern. Now, the earlier management of the airline now stands suspended. However, the NCLT has directed that none of the employees are to be laid off. The NCLT has also asked the Go First management to deposit 5 crore rupees with the resolution professional to meet immediate expenses. Go First CEO Kaushik Khona welcomed the order, calling it a historic judgment in terms of pace of the proceedings.
I think it's historic, and I think it's millions of prayers have been heard. I think it is also historic in the sense that the purpose of IBC, which is to preserve a viable business before it becomes unviable, has been really salute over there. That's the basic purpose of this Section 10, where we wanted that the airline should preserve its assets, it should preserve all its viable opportunities to survive. And one of the major issue which we have is to get the Pratt & Whitney engines, and I think that is what the arbitral award means.
Well, Shireen Bhan caught up with the former DGCA, Mr. Sivaraman, as well as Mark D. Martin, CEO of Martin Consulting, and began by asking them the road ahead for the airline as the Pratt & Whitney issue continues to be unresolved.
Yeah, that's a very major issue that has come up in this crisis. As you would recall, 4 to 5 years ago, Indigo had a similar problem with the Pratt & Whitney engines, and their fleet was also grounded. There was a serious problem. But however, they managed it. Now, because Go Airline is only having about 54 or 55 aircraft, and they found that 50% of the fleet grounded, so they couldn't manage the cash properly. So one issue that has to be resolved here is how in future airlines are going to manage their purchase of engines. If you look at the engine market today, it is controlled by GE, Pratt & Whitney, Safran, and Rolls-Royce. Now, if you go deeper, you would find that GE and Pratt & Whitney have got a joint venture. GE and Safran has got a joint venture. One doesn't know whether GE and Rolls-Royce has also got some commitment. So it is somewhat of a cartelization. So how would a carrier choose an engine which is available in the market which they think that will do well? In the case of Pratt & Whitney engine, because it is a high bypass ratio engine with a lot of fuel efficiency, most of them plumped in for that engine. Whether it was tested properly in the field or not, one doesn't know. So today, the Go Airline got some breathing time. But at the same time, if I were the DGCA, I would also look into the business practices of Go Air, whether they were good enough to run the airline on efficient and safe lines. That's another factor.
Yes, and I would imagine that the regulator will have to look into that. Mark, we'll address that issue in a second as well. But on the back of it, as Mr. Sivaraman also pointed out, with this order, at least the repossession of aircraft, which was an imminent threat, as well as any possible action from the lenders, there is now a moratorium on that. So there is some breathing space available. But what can the IRP do in this situation to try and turn things around for the airline?
Good evening, Shireen, and wonderful to be with you on CNBC. This is a landmark judgment, clearly, for the IBC and NCLT court to vote in favor of to pass an order in favor of a moratorium. Clearly suggests that there's a bigger thought of not letting Go Air sink and collapse. The whole idea is to keep Go Air afloat, keep them running, keep them functioning. Because if they turn if they go belly up, then we're talking about 17,000 jobs at stake. We're talking about the government losing on GST, VAT revenue, and this being a disaster. 9% of our market share gets shaved off, and the cost of travel goes up. Now, on the order where lessors cannot take back their aircraft, now this is a bit redundant from two perspectives. The first perspective is that under the Cape Town Convention, lessors can take the aircraft whenever they want and from wherever they want. All they need to do is apply with the DGCA because they own the aircraft. But in this case, In the case of Pratt & Whitney engines that are fitted on Airbus A320 aircraft owned by lessors, how are you going to take the aircraft out of the country, Shireen, when there are no engines installed? Nearly 30 aircraft out of 56 are parked in airports across the country without engines, and guess what? There's a long waiting list.
But Mr. Sivaraman, let's talk about what can and should happen in the next 3 months. What can the IRP do? What will it mean? We've already established very clearly that half the fleet is grounded. Could they lease more aircraft, etc.? We don't know. But what can the IRP do to ensure that this remains a viable concern?
First of all, as I have been also a finance secretary in Government of India, revenue secretary in Government of India, first of all, the ARP has to look into the financial strength of the company. Right now, I believe it has got 11,000 crores in debt. How much it owes to the bank, how much it can get by way of working capital to run the airline on a going concern basis. This must be his immediate objective, to rectify. The aircraft that are functional, that can be flown now, which are 27 aircraft on the ground, he must also evaluate whether they can be flown in a commercially viable manner. Then only he can start his operations. So he cannot do it instantly. He has to look into the financial aspect first. And secondly, he should look into whether these 27 aircraft can be commercially viable, producing at least 1 rupee over all the expenses, so that, he can run the airline. If he continues to run losses, then this 11,000 crores will also mount. And even when the Pratt & Whitney engines become available, Go Airline may not be a viable airline at that point of time, because the losses will be very huge and they may not know how to make good the losses.
Well, here's a CNBC-TV18 news break that has been confirmed. JSW Infra has filed IPO papers with market regulator SEBI for a 2,800 crore rupee issue. Now, the company plans to use proceeds from the share sale for expansion and retiring debt. Ritu Singh joins us now with more. Ritu, take us through the contours of this IPO.
This is the first IPO coming from the JSW Group in more than a decade, so a significant one to watch out for. As we reported earlier today, JSW Infrastructure, which is the ports business of the JSW Group, has filed the DRHP for its initial public offering with SEBI as of the 9th of May. It plans to raise up to 2,800 crore rupees through the IPO route and will deploy these funds to retire its debt and also to fund its capacity expansion projects. As far as the debt is concerned, the net debt stood at about 2,875 crores, which was the last figure that we have. The JSW Infrastructure IPO is actually the third public listing by the group, and it follows 13 years after the public listing of JSW Energy, which was in January of 2010. Now, JSW Infrastructure promoters, we understand, will not be diluting their current stake in this IPO. JM Financial, Axis Capital, Credit Suisse, HSBC Securities, these are some of the book-running lead managers to this issue. Now, as of December 31st last year, JSW Infrastructure had an installed cargo handling capacity of more than 153 million tons per annum. And as part of their strategy, we understand that the company wants to further expand its asset portfolio and grow its operations by evaluating acquisition opportunities. And so this IPO is going to be critical. The equity shares of JSW Infrastructure are proposed to be listed both on the BSE and the NSE.
Right, Ritu, thanks a lot for that. With that, we slip into a very short break, but coming up on the other side, the race for the 224 assembly constituencies of Karnataka kicks off with the Finance Minister Sitharaman, Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai, and Infosys founder N.R. Narayana Murthy casting early votes. Details when we come back. Well, Karnataka voted today to elect its next government after a high-pitched election campaigning by the BJP, the Congress, as well as the Janata Dal Secular. Now, while the BJP is looking to beat anti-incumbency, the Congress is pegging its hopes on a return to power. The Janata Dal Secular, meanwhile, hopes to play the role of a kingmaker. So what are the crucial issues for the citizens this is election season? My colleague Ritu Singh joins us now and gives us a lowdown from outside the Vidhan Sauda.
Well, you know, it's been a hectic 40 days of campaigning here in Maharashtra, and it all boils down to what you see behind me, the seat of power for the state, 224 assembly seats that were up for grabs. Voting ends today at 6 p.m. and the people have made their decision. The results are scheduled to be counted on the 13th of May, so that's when we know who finally comes to power. But currently the ruling party, that is the BJP, is, like you said, facing anti-incumbency waves, because if you know, since 1985, Karnataka hasn't really voted the incumbent party back to power. Can BJP fight that? We'll have to see. Three critical parties at play here: the BJP, the Congress, and the JDS. For the Congress, this is among the states that will go to elections this year. An important setup for the general elections next year. For the JDS, which has partnered both with Congress and BJP in the past, it wants to play on the front foot on its own as well now. And of course, for the BJP, the state of Karnataka is its last standing bastion in the southern part of India. So it wants to maintain its hold here. Now, the key election issues which have been dominating the voters' minds include, of course, the infrastructure, the state of infrastructure in this city. We saw what happened with the floods last year. The traffic congestion has been a perennial issue. Then, of course, there's law and order, corruption, farmers' welfare. All of this has been taken into account. Unemployment among youth as the voters cast their vote today. A quick look at the voter profile as well. There are 5.2 crore registered voters, out of which more than 9 lakh are first-time voters. Let's see, when the counting happens, who eventually comes to power. But like I said, this is the seat of power. The party that is able to prove its majority here will be, forming the government here in the state of Karnataka.
You know, my parents told us when we were pretty young that it is a paramount responsibility of a caring citizen to exercise his or her voting right. That's the only way you can bring about better progress in a democracy like India. Therefore, my father and mother would ensure that the day we reach the voting age, they would not allow us to skip the responsibility of voting. So I remember it very well. And I'm glad that we have done it for our children too. Of course, my son is abroad, but my daughter-in-law is here. She has come, she has voted. So I think it is a very, very important duty. The day we don't exercise that duty diligently and with a lot of concern and care, we will lose the right to say this is not good, this has to improve, etc.
So, as one of the most prominent citizens of the city, as a voice of corporate India, what do you think are some of the key issues when it comes to the state-level policies?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what government comes into action. All of us, the citizens of this city, you, me, he, everybody, we want a better quality of life. We want our children to be able to go from their home to school and come back safe. We want clean air. We want reasonable job opportunities. We want good infrastructure. We want good health care. So these are common for citizens all over the world. There is nothing special about Bangalore. It's understandable that Bangalore's population has probably grown fourfold. It is a very, very tough job to keep up with that kind of growth. So while I have full sympathy with successive governments in the past, I want the future governments to understand that they have been given an extraordinary responsibility to make this city even more attractive. So it is a great challenge, and I'm sure as people who have high aspirations, the people in the incoming government will leave no stone unturned to make this an even better place.
If you were to have one wish list from the new government, what would that be?
No, I think these are all different for people from different, education levels, different economic levels, different social levels, etc. So there is really nothing specific about anybody. All that we would say, we want this place to benchmark itself with similar places in the developed world, and then say, we will make Bangalore a more attractive place than those places. That is all. And at the same time, nobody can forget about rural India, rural Karnataka, because unless we are able to provide hope and confidence to the rural people, particularly to the rural child, in terms of providing basics to them, I think we would have failed in our duty.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's anti-corruption agency got 8-day custody of former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan after arresting him in connection with the Al-Qadr Trust case yesterday. Meanwhile, Khan was indicted by a court in the Tosha Khana case today. This case is based on allegations that the former Prime Minister sold state gifts unlawfully when he was in power between 2018 and 2022. Khan's supporters have been protesting across the country over his arrest. In Pakistan's Punjab, thousands have been arrested as well. Meanwhile, Dawn reported that army has been deployed in Punjab to maintain law and order. And shifting gears now to the auto space, MG Motors has said that it plans to offer majority stakes to local partners over the next 2 to 4 years. This is a part of a 5-year business roadmap in the country. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, President and MD Rajiv Chhabra said that the British brand is speaking to multiple partners and has not finalized on any partner as of yet. Listen in.
That we are right now going through phase 2 of MG, we call it MG 2.0, in which we are focusing on volumes growth, profitability and sustainability. It means we should utilize our plant 100% and we should become profitable by the end of this year. Luckily, we have become cash broke even from last month. So this is our plan for short term. Today we were happy to announce the roadmap, as we call it, MG 3.0, which is the second plant onwards from 25 to 28. So in that time frame, we are going to have a second plant in Halol itself in Gujarat. That plant would have a capacity of another 180,000. So plant 1 and plant 2 would have 300,000 capacity. We also would launch 4 to 5 cars from the new plant in the next 4 years. Primarily it would be EV. So by 2028, we feel 65 to 70% of our cars would be EV. Now, in terms of Indianizing the operations, it's basically Indianizing the management, Indianizing the board, Indianizing the shareholders, and the whole governance part. So on the shareholder side, we feel that majority of our company would be owned by Indians in the next 2 to 4 years. And the first step of getting Indian partner or Indian financial institutions, hopefully we should be able to announce it and do it in this year.
There have been reports that JSW Steel is interested in acquiring a stake, maybe a 15% stake in MG Motor. What is the current status of those negotiations?
So it's wrong to comment on that speculation, to be honest, because we are talking to multiple partners. And when I say partners, these are the Indian promoters of various companies. It is Indian financial institutions. These are high net worth individuals and also some of our Indian dealers. So it's the whole ecosystem of possible partners is huge, and we are talking to multiple people at this point of time, and we have not finalized with anyone so far.
Right. So is it right to assume that you're speaking to both automobile companies, existing OEMs, vehicle companies in business right now, and also those who are not in the electric vehicle or the passenger car business looking to enter the market?
So these possible partners belong to all kinds of categories and all kinds of industries.
Right. How much stake would you like to dilute by the end of this year?
See, that's difficult to say right now, but our aim is to have majority dilution in favor of Indians in next 2 to 4 years.
2 to 4 years. Also, to ask you, how much money are you looking to raise through this exercise? Would this money then be used for expanding the second plant, expanding your presence across India, and maybe look at cell manufacturing and hydrogen fuel cell manufacturing as well?
So we are planning to raise upwards of 5,000 crores through this exercise in the next 2-3 years, and that should take care of the second plant. Also should enable us to launch 4 to 5 new products. Also, part of it we are going to invest into charging infrastructure. And as far as the battery cell or hydrogen cell is concerned, that will be outside the gambit of this scope, because we intend to have some separate JVs with the Indian possible partner or with other third-party players to bring the technology to India and localize that in India, not only for MG Motor in India, but maybe also for some other OEMs.
So how advanced are your plans to cell manufacture in India?
So it's still at a planning stage, and as you know, that technology doesn't exist right now in India, so it's slightly premature to talk about that. But our intention is to help develop the local supply chain system within the country so that we become self-reliant here, and which is in line with the government direction. And that's what we are planning to do. But we need to have a lot of discussions with possible partners there and joint venture partners in order to execute that.
When you speak about an IPO, you said we'll go for an IPO by 2028. What are the steps that you'd like to complete before that?
Frankly, I did not say as such that IPO, but IPO is the logical route, the last stage in this process. And if that happens, that would be towards 2027-28.
So it has been considered, but it's the last step.
That's the last step of this 3-step or 4-step process.
How will the leadership pattern change? What is the company envisaging? The parent company is Chinese entity SAIC. How will things change as far as the board is concerned, the leadership of MG in India is concerned?
I think we need to, this is going to be Indian-led operation. Right now also, even the front end, me and my team, 99.9% of us are Indians who are managing the show here. So that will continue. With the local partner joining us, hopefully that will strengthen the team. That will also hasten and accelerate the pace of execution. And also, possibly, we should be able to localize a lot in India. So that's how the value addition I see it from a possible partner. And I think, as I mentioned, that we are in the process of strengthening our team right now also, because the phase 3 will make us a bigger player, right? So we need to have the right people in the team, and we need to start thinking big from that perspective.
My final question, the Indian government has been reviewing its stance on Chinese investments. It's been happening as far as cell phone manufacturing goes. Your application for PLI, while it was approved, it has been held up due to provisions that is needed, approvals that are needed from DPIIT. Has there been any kind of change in stance on that? What have been your talks with the Indian government? So
I really don't know the status of that, and that probably I'm not the right person to answer. But the way we have articulated our plan, MG 3.0, towards the future, and when we are Indianizing the company, so hopefully lots of things get answered and taken care of by this MG 3.0 approach of Indianizing the operations.
Well, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Centre. More news and updates to continue right here on CNBC-TV18.